What's up guys, with Tekken 7 being out for so long, I'm kinda not sure if I even want to do this review anymore. It's just taking me way too long. Maybe when Tekken 8 comes out I can... Tekken 7 is amazing and more people need to hear about it right now, so let's get started. Starting with story and presentation, the game includes a cinematic story mode focusing on the character Heihachi Mishima, voiced by Unsho Ishizuka. Oh no! Oh yes, and his fight with his son Kazuya from the perspective of a random journalist.
I found myself staying in a cheap hotel.
If you have never heard of Tekken before, the story sadly does not take the time to introduce the player to all the characters in the roster, and surprisingly enough, neither does the arcade mode, which is where most fighting games place most of their in-game lore. To compensate for this, the game does have a couple of character episodes, but it does not help much as they are all only single fights and many of them don't even introduce the characters they are about. I was blown away by the presentation of the story mode though, not necessarily the gameplay of it, but I'll talk about that in a bit. The way the story conducted itself was amazingly smooth, going from cutscene to gameplay and integrating old cutscenes from previous Tekken games for the nostalgia factor. The most interesting thing though was how the game took advantage of the brief moment when a knockdown happens to inject a quick cutscene mid-fight without ruining the flow of combat. This is something I've never seen done in a fighting game before and is in my opinion one of the coolest things that could be done to give this genre of games a truly cinematic experience. As far as the rest of the game goes, it's beautiful with top-notch modern graphics, decent music I'd have to say, as many of the actual stage themes are kind of forgettable background music, but some of the story battles have amazing themes. The stages look great and sustain damage throughout the match, with many having some sort of condition to transition the player to another version of the stage. The characters look and sound fantastic, each being voiced with their native language.
Like I was saying, I slept a few centuries beneath your estate and...
Réveille-toi! Ne t'avise pas de t'endormir en ma présence.
You just don't shut up, do you?
And finally, the UI looks fairly decent, although the super meter for Eliza and Akuma can look a bit out of place. Interestingly enough, you can customize the life bars with unlockable content, but we will discuss that in the next section. On to gameplay. Tekken 7's gameplay can be broken down into two categories, things that happen in combat and things that happen out of combat. Starting with the obviously more important factor to many, as far as the fighting goes, you have 37 unique characters, 10 new to the series, to select from, each with their own fighting style such as Steve's boxing or Nina's combination of Hapkido and Koppo, although some of the more fanciful characters take liberties with what you would call a fighting style. By now you have noticed that the game is a full 3D fighter, so players used to fighting games limited to a two-dimensional playing field might need a little time to adjust. There are 4 attack buttons in this game, each one linked to one of the player's limbs, and combining these buttons with different directions can get you a laundry list of different moves, but more on that when I talk tutorials. The stages you fight on also hold significance as each have their own properties like walls, breakable areas, and transitions. Luckily, the game gives you a brief moment during the stage selection to show what the selected stage has to offer. That might have been too quick. Let's slow that down a little bit. One of the biggest changes from older Tekkens was the rage system added in Tekken 6 and is now returning in Tekken 7. Rage mode activates after a character's health drops to a critical level. In this form, the player deals more damage and has access to 2 new abilities: their Rage Art, a high damage cinematic super, and their Rage Drive, a useful EX attack that can lead to big damage combos. Outside of combat, the game still offers a fair amount of content. You have the standard features such as arcade mode, online player and ranked matches, and versus mode for when you got friends at your house. You know, that thing that happened in the early 2000s. The game also has the cinematic story mode already covered, and Treasure Battle, which is the survival mode of the game, but with a twist. Treasure Battle is a mode where you fight endless waves of enemies and obtain money for every win. On top of the monetary reward, you can also obtain items to customize your player only obtainable from this mode. And after a few wins in a row, the game will occasionally add modifiers to the combat, such as increased damage or high speed combat.
Turbo mode is so good!
After obtaining enough money from all the modes, you can use them to buy items in both the character customization, UI customization, and gallery modes. The customization in this game is fairly good, but not as good as previous titles such as Tekken Tag 2 or Tekken 6, as some of the categories have been merged together and many outfits are universal and lack unique designs. But real talk, we all need to be rocking that Bullet Club shirt. Call me Kenny Omega. With that said, the customization options are a lot of fun, with certain items adding special visual effects for certain actions, or some items adding new moves when equipped. The last notable thing is the gallery mode, which contains unlockable versions of all the cutscenes and character artwork in Tekken 7. On top of that, the game also has a huge amount of fan service unlockables in the form of all the cutscenes from previous Tekken games being unlockable along with Tekken 7's. A really nice feature for the nostalgia of older fans. And from here, we move on to the miscellaneous section, learning and online. My biggest criticism of Tekken 7 has to be in how little it does to teach new players to the genre. Nothing about how the characters are supposed to be played, how important it is to learn juggle and wall combos, or even the myriad of ways a player can pick themselves up after being knocked down.
Right, so like you can hit the button, and if you got parry, you can get out of the parry. But that's
Really?
only for generic parry. That's only for generic parry.
So you can
can't-
unparry a parry,
Yes. But
and it's
only
called a
generic.
chicken,
Yeah,
and the game
Yeah.
tells you nothing about this.
exactly. Exactly.
The story mode in particular is bad about this, as the game has a function called Story Assist, which shows they acknowledge this, but instead of teaching the player, they instead have one-button auto combos. Nearly as insulting is the move list, which gives very little information by itself. You can click on the attacks to get a nice visual demonstration, but don't let the game trick you into believing certain moves can combo. Don't let that intimidate you though. While Tekken has a very high skill ceiling, it also has a pretty low skill floor, with only a handful of moves per character being key to play at an average level, and juggle combos being fairly simple to do. One of the more interesting things about Tekken is the inclusion of a ranking system in single player, getting you used to the idea of raising and falling in the ranks long before actually committing to it in the online modes. Now let's talk briefly about those online modes. The game has the standard lobby and ranked matches, the only interesting thing being that ranked matches are broken down into 2 options, warm up and match list. Now both options have you pre-select your character, but warm up has you wait in what is essentially training mode for a match, while match list does exactly what it sounds like, having you select from a list of other players who did decide to sit in training mode. The netcode in my experience was fantastic. I didn't experience any lag despite one of the people I play against routinely playing from a less than stellar location. The only other notable thing about online was the tournament mode, but I was unable to get a match in it, so it might be best to get a few online friends together if you want to play that mode. All in all, pretty standard online experience with little lag, and if you want to get better at the game, you will have to search the web. But hey, you're already on YouTube, so that's half the work done. On to final thoughts. Tekken 7 is, in my opinion, a pretty good game all things considered. Visually one of the best on the market right now, but the best aspect to me is the story mode and the online netcode. Not lagging in a fighting game is the most important thing when it comes to preventing frustration, so I'm glad not to have any lag in my online experience. When it comes to story mode though, while it started out slow, it gradually pulled me in, culminating in the absolute best final fight I've ever seen in a fighting game to date. And for once I think a fighting game has made a story moment that had to be played rather than be seen for the full effect. When it comes to other forms of single player content, the treasure battle was a pretty fun variation on the standard survival mode, but I can't help but wish there was more content when it came to single player. Well, okay then. With a large roster of characters, unique stage dynamics, and goofy item attacks, there will be plenty of memorable experiences inside the online of this fighter, so my final rating will have to be a steal for the hardcore fighting game fans, especially Tekken fans. This review is more or less confirmation bias for you guys, and a buy for people getting into the 3D fighter genre. The single player content is still a bit lackluster in my mind, but I had a ton of fun with the story, treasure battle, and most importantly, the fighting was fun. You don't need to be a pro to enjoy something like this. And with that, I know this was a bit of a short review, but still, leave in the comment section your opinions on Tekken 7, and I will see you guys next time. Peace!